Welcome everyone to our presentation today on elder abuse. The topic we're going to be focusing on is you power, because no matter who you are in our community, everyone has the power to make a difference and to stand up for the rights of older adults and ourselves when we feel that we're disrespected or someone is taking advantage of us. As individual, but more particularly around seniors as we age, because we have this issue in society called ageism, which we'll talk about today, that's really disempowers individuals in terms of what their rights are and access to services, etc. So we're going to kind of go through that today. Before we get going, I would like to give a land acknowledgement before we begin. So we acknowledge that we gather on the traditional territory of a number of First Nations and acknowledge their stewardship of this land throughout the ages. We seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one that is based on honor and deep respect. I know everyone is, now we've put everybody as attendees. So if you have a question or a comment that you want to make during the session, please post in the chat box. We will, as you know, we're going to open this back up and put everybody on camera so you can sign your questions and we will be able to respond. We are recording this, as you know, so at the end we will stop the recording so people can then ask their questions freely, and then this won't be on that recording. I will be sending an evaluation to Sonia, and if you wouldn't mind completing that, I would really appreciate that. Your feedback helps us plan future conferences and webinars that are of interest to you. And sometimes we plan them and mostly with your feedback from our participants, so we can guide the needs of our community and provide the information that they're requesting. You will see, I will see my video as well as ASL interpreter for the presentation today. And then, as I said, you can, I think Sonia, or if you are at home, you can make the screen larger by pulling across. There's a line between the speaker and the PowerPoint that you can make that a little bit larger on your own screens. And that's about it. If you have a question, you can put it either in the chat box or the question, or wait till the end. We're very informal today. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about how do we recognize what the warning signs are of elder abuse? What is ageism? How do we recognize it? Have you experienced it? As we go through this, think about yourself and how people may treat you, or some of the examples if you've had that in your own experience or know somebody. How can we respond safely and supportively to individuals who may be at risk, who are maybe experiencing abuse? And the biggest thing is that what can you do to make a difference? Many of us don't know that we have the power to make a difference. And everybody, no matter what our role is in our society, in our communities, in our families, can make a difference. And we're going to talk about that as we go through this. And then we're going to talk about what help is available in your community. So U-Power. So what is it? It's internal. It's about you have the power to change the world, right? Sometimes we just don't know that we have the power to make a difference. And it's the program that this was developed back in 2019 was around the thought around the bystander, that individuals, neighbors, friends, and family can reach out and support one another. And it's most often that we know when there's violence or abuse happening, it's often those people most close to that individual who are aware that there's a situation that's unhealthy. And sorry, I apologize, my dogs are barking. So it's having that, knowing what you can do to make a difference. And it's those small actions that sometimes have a big impact. So just even reaching out to someone, asking them how they're doing can make a big difference in someone's life. I apologize for my dogs. So let's look at what you can do to support an older adult who may be experiencing abuse or neglect. Because everyone has the right to live safe and free from abuse. And everyone has a shared responsibility to create safe, healthy, and communities that we live in. So it's not just one person's responsibility, it's everyone's responsibility. And that we all deserve to live in a safe, healthy community, and supported by others around us, not only with our families, but the area that the community that we live in, which is not just family, it's beyond that. It's a society. We have to change the way that, we value and revere older adults in our community. And people need support. The people who experience abuse need support, but you also need to make those persons who are perpetrators or making abusive actions towards others accountable for their actions, because so often it's not, people are not accountable. Their behavior goes unrecognized or not addressed, and the abuse continues. And it's up to us as neighbors, friends, and families to make that difference. So let's see what you can do. So what is ageism? Many of you may have heard of that word before. We hear often around racism, sexism. Ageism is just as important as all those other isms. Discrimination is a discrimination against someone because of their age, and that is ageism. So most often it's associated being older. And because you're old, people disvalue you, treat you differently because of maybe not even knowing you. They make a judgment just because you tell them your birthday. You're 65, they already automatically put you in a group, which is me, saying that you don't have your cognition, you can't remember things, you're too old to drive a car, you're too old to make any decisions. People put you in this group, and these ageist attitudes are a societal problem. And it's not only what individuals think, it's also policies, the way that services sometimes are delivered, the systemic problems that we see in funding, that seniors issues may not get as much. We know they don't get as much funding as younger, other issues, even violence, prevention violence. There's a lot of funding that goes to violence against women, but it's mostly younger women, and sometimes we forget about older women. So there's a lot of issues. Ageism isn't just an individual, it crosses all areas that seniors are involved in. So policies and society. Somebody was mentioning once about their pensions, that they got cut because of an age requirement. So it factors all issues. And ageism is most tolerated form of social prejudice. There was a study done indicating, this is a Canadian study, indicating 6 in 10 seniors felt that they were untreated. That's over 60% of seniors. That's a significant problem. And 8 to 10 seniors actually told people that they felt like they were less important. And 1 in 5 felt like they were a burden. We have to change this, right? This is just not acceptable. Seniors are not less important. They're just
Sorry, let me just catch up with the numbers. I'm so sorry. It's okay. So 8 out of 10. I'm just on that. Just give me a moment. What was the 1 in 5 or the 5?
1 in 5 see themselves as a burden.
Thank you. Sorry, if you could just pick up after those stats.
I always forget about numbers. So we need to change the way that we value seniors, and it's like I say, it's an ongoing issue. Sometimes people's approach to the way that they're treating older adults could be out of care, but they take the pendulum a little bit too far over, that they're wanting to make decisions and do everything for you, because they think they're helpful, and yet what they don't realize that they are sometimes taking away your decision making. They kind of go too far. They think they're helping, but then they kind of, as they keep helping, they keep taking away your power and abilities, even though it's well intended. And it's up to us to tell the individuals that are doing that, saying, thank you for your support. However, let's bring this back. I will ask you or inform you when I do need your help. I thank you for being there, but let's bring this back so you are still making those decisions that are in control, and you're in that power position of making your own choices. So because ageism, thinking that you're not capable, that they kind of shift and say, oh, I'm going to do everything for you, and you have no say. But in fact, you're actually capable. You can do it, but you want to make those decisions, and you have to kind of stand your ground sometimes. And people sometimes don't realize that they're even doing this until we kind of point it out to them. So let's talk about abuse now. So abuse, we sometimes say, is an equalizer, because we all struggle with abuse when it shows up in a relationship with people we care about. And it doesn't matter who you are. Sometimes it can be, we all struggle. It's a difficult conversation. It's not easy for anyone, and we all deal with abuse differently. And so we say an equalizer because I think everyone starts from that kind of base. And we all want to care and support one another, but it's the process of how we get there, and supporting one another. But we all kind of have that kind of baseline of how we may deal, or the interpretation of abuse in itself is an uncomfortable situation for many people, and we all struggle with how that is and how it affects individuals, and it's how we learn to better deal with it and address it and respond to it, that will help us support others in their journey. And abuse is really about power and control. It's someone who's harmed an older adult, who limits their control and their rights and freedoms. When people take away your choices, when you become afraid of being hurt, humiliated, left alone, or fear a relationship may end, that can be considered, situations of abuse, because you're not free to make those choices, and someone is putting you in a place where you don't have that ability to make choice. And it's more than just impolite, rude behavior. Like I say, it's that someone who's influencing, taking advantage of you, telling you where you can go, where you can't go, making your decisions, finances. And it's also neglect, where someone that you're relying on for care fails to support you, or when you cannot manage yourself. And it's their responsibility to assist you. So we'll get into those dynamics in a minute. We also should talk about the issue around domestic violence. And because it is happening with older adults, abuse doesn't just stop at a certain age. It unfortunately continues into older adults and couples. And we have seen an increase of domestic violence, particularly for older women. New stats have shown an increase in femicides and domestic violence among older adults, and I say particularly women. So we need to consider that, and there has been more work done to look at this issue and to make sure that older adults, women's needs are addressed. And there has been additional work looked at older women with disabilities and how they are also vulnerable to abuse, but also domestic abuse. And we have done prior webinars around this issue to bring awareness to that problem as well. The one thing about power imbalances is that it makes a person feel very powerless. It makes the person feel small, alone, and powerless. So that makes you feel very small, like you don't have a say in anything, that you are afraid to speak up. And that is a real problem, because the abuse will continue, and that fear that happens just enables that abuser to continue their habits, because you feel very disadvantaged. But abuse can also be terrifying. People can be raging, could be yelling, throwing things. And we know it crosses verbal, physical, financial, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, and neglect. All of those issues of abuse can happen to older adults, and they all take various forms. And as I say, it can be sometimes subtle and hard to see. Often older adults may not come forward and tell you that abuse is happening. They may be very, keep it hidden, especially emotional abuse. If someone is yelling at you or screaming, we can't kind of see that externally. You internally may be feeling very sad. You could be, depressed, but we can't see any physical signs of a bruise. But emotionally, we may see you withdrawn or tearful, not talking to anyone, and going out to social groups, meeting your friends. So because you're just feeling unworthy because someone has been abusive to you, and that person's also controlling your every move. So you can't go somewhere without asking, or someone giving you approval to go out. So that abusive behavior kind of puts you in a box and saying you can't do whatever you would like to do. And they also control money. That's a huge factor that we see most often in abuse, that someone's controlling finances or stealing from you. Power of attorney is one of a big perpetrator of financial abuse, where you trust someone to look after your finances, and they go and they take your money and spend it for themselves. They're not acting in your best interest. These are just examples of other warning signs that we see when abuse happens. Sometimes it could be your phone's cut off. So they take your phone, or you don't have access to a phone. And with COVID, we found these situations escalated tremendously around abuse, because we were all, during lockdown, we're all in our homes. So living with that abusive person escalated the incidences because you were unable to, individuals were unable to reach out for assistance, weren't able to get out of the home to talk to anybody for further support. And it just created a lot more situations where people were reaching out for help. So I did give some examples of abusive behavior. Here are some other controlling behaviors that you might witness. Isolation from family and friends. Someone telling you who you can and can't see, or not allowing you to associate or have a visitor over. Not allowed to see a sister or a brother. Threatening violence. Sometimes that could be towards yourself or a pet. If some people may start being abusive to the pet, and then the person could be abused after. And they use that as a ploy to show how powerful they are and controlling, and creating that fear within a person. The disregard for your privacy, not allowing you to have mail, or locking doors, sometimes on the inside of rooms in a house, or sorry, outside of rooms in a house. All of these are just examples of abusive behaviors. And who's at risk? Everyone is at risk. No one can say that, oh, I often hear, oh, it will never happen to me. However, we hope that never happens, but in some situations, it does happen to those who thought that it would never happen, that their children would never disrespect them or harm them or steal from them. And it can happen at any age. It's not just a magic number, at 70 that this happens. It can happen to anyone, any older adult, and no matter what social, demographic, cultural background, how much money you have, it doesn't matter. Abuse it can happen to anybody. And often people are isolated, as I said before, and that isolation could be because of language, could be because of culture, where the person's not allowed to speak or can't speak or doesn't have access to interpretation as we have today, which keeps people, again, isolated. And that when that escalation of isolation increases, when isolation increases, so does abuse. So when you're alone for a long, long time, the abuse can just escalate at the same rate. Other risk factors that we've seen are depression, being a female, as I talked about, or maybe you've experienced abuse as a child. Those are some risk factors. But we also know that it can happen to individuals who are living with someone. And we're going to show a video around that dependency or codependency of how that can happen. Health status, when you're dependent on someone for care, that can be a risk factor because you may not be able to leave that situation because you need that person to support you. Or there could be addictions, whether that's alcohol, drugs, gambling, that can play a role in abuse behaviors. And also a big one is cognitive impairment. When someone such as dementia is unable to speak on their own behalf or doesn't understand what's happening or appreciate the circumstances they're in, it allows that perpetrator or abuser to continue their actions because no one's checking in to make sure that they're okay or questioning the situation. We also know other forms of discrimination are those within the LGBTQS plus community. So seniors face not only discrimination maybe of age, and if you're a woman, And then if you're in the LGBT community, you face further discrimination. So you can see how that further escalates the abuse and isolation. And also Indigenous women. If you look at homicides, they make up 21% of homicides in Canada. Now that stat's dated. It probably needs to be updated, and I suspect it's larger now. So you can see how these intersections of residential schools, people with disabilities, and the LGBT community. These are just examples, and there's many, many more around intersection and discrimination against older adults who are abused. So think about your friends and your family, and you know, could they be in a situation where they're vulnerable? Just looking at, you know, what those warning signs are and risk factors. Kind of reflect on that. And not everybody who's abusive are monsters. They're people we know. They're people, our family members. They're our neighbors, people that you've known for many years that suddenly you find out that they've been, you know, misappropriating and having unhealthy relationship with their loved one. And you never thought that that would have happened. And often we find that it's adult children, grandchildren, which is really sad because, you know, we think we have a good relationship with our children and our adult children, and why would they take our money, right? But those are those who are most close to us that are causing this abusive behavior towards older adults. But it can also be paid caregivers. It could be a landlord, a financial advisor, anybody sort of in that position of power that takes that authority and trust and violates it. So what we're not talking about is strangers when we think about elder abuse. We're not talking about the scammer because we don't know them. Yes, they take our money and they scam us financially, but we don't have that relationship with the individual. And sometimes it crosses the line though. If anybody is on social media and you're reaching out and you don't know who you're talking to, you sometimes can develop a relationship with someone online, like dating sites, or just even like through Facebook, that someone you don't really know and they befriend you. You may develop a relationship and then they start abusing that relationship trust. Maybe you don't know them, you just met them, but you really don't know who's behind that screen. Because in your mind, you feel like you're in that relationship with that individual. We've seen many people lose thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars through like online romance scams because they feel like they're in that relationship with that individual, even though they haven't physically seen them or know them personally. So it's kind of a fine line when you think about some of those online relationships, whether they're considered in that realm of a scammer or in a relationship. It's kind of a gray area. So what makes us feel uncomfortable? So what I want to do is show a video. There is closed caption to the video. But we also have our ASL interpreter as well. But this is a scenario we see very often around moving in with a loved one, because often we do need support and we do need care as older adults, but it's often the other way around too, where we have our family members moving back in with the older adult because of need. And now with the economics the way they are, with COVID, it's just, you know, escalated that in terms of people's economic financial situations, that sometimes we do have to, you know, live together because of, you know, rent and jobs and all those kind of issues. But we need to kind of look at what are the things that we need to be aware of in those situations, and how can we identify some of those warning signs if someone is moving in with us, because sometimes that power and control can shift over time, and we may not even realize it's happening in a relationship, because we're living together, and we're making adaptations to and compromises to work with one or to live with one another. But I have a scenario that's just going to kind of show you a scenario where abuse can happen. So as you watch the short video, kind of look for some of the warning signs that you might pick up on about what the son is doing to the mom as he moves in. So I'm just going to play this it's got closed captioning. Hopefully it works.
Are you sure you're going to be comfortable in the basement?
Yeah, there's plenty of room, Mom. Besides, your granddaughter will never be home. You're a lifesaver, Mom. I don't know what I would have done without you.
I'm sure you're going to find another job in no time.
Look at that. You mind if I watch a movie? By the way, your bank card was rejected at the gas station today. It was really embarrassing.
What are you talking about?
I went to fill up my car and it wouldn't go through. It must be overdrawn or something. You better hope your check comes in this week and you're not gonna be able to get your prescriptions refilled. What are you doing?
I can't get used to the damp downstairs.
Oh, try another blanket, Mom. We're boiling up here.
I would have wished you would have asked me before you moved me into the basement.
Why? Do you just have to be on my back, Mom? It's too dark and dingy down there. I get depressed, you know that. You play your puzzles down there as well as you can up here.
What's for dinner, Grams? I'm starving.
So you can see quite a few things in that video where the son, Michael, has lost his job. He has to move in with the mom. He may have some depression. We don't know what's in the glass, but we may suspect that there's alcohol. And the escalation, if you look at, it's only going to be for a few weeks, and now that's turned into almost a year, right? That he's lived there, and he's got his daughter there, who's also disrespectful with the mom as well. We've seen things pushing away her puzzle, shutting off the light. She's gonna not have the medication because he's using her money, right? Doesn't have money to hardly get the gas. So you can see through that video that there's so many situations moving her to the basement without even asking her, just assuming that his needs are more important than the mother's, right? And is it a sense of entitlement, right? Is that ageist attitude? Well, mom's needs aren't as important as mine, right? I need the money more than she does, so I'll get what I need, and she'll be left without having her important medications or gas money, etc. Reading her mail is another example. And that whole disrespect from the younger granddaughter around that I see as ageism, like what's for dinner, Grams. It's just the way that the portrayal of that is not healthy. Doesn't seem like a good relationship or valuing the grandmother in that way she should be. And as a society, we see this happening, right? This relationship. The son probably does love his mother. He may not even recognize what he's doing, as abusive. And she feels probably shame and knowing that the son is doing this, but may not know how to reach out for help, right? To talk to anybody about what's happening to her. And what we, Michael might believe that, by moving in, he's helping his mom because, he could help around the house, but from the video, it doesn't seem like he's really doing much. It's more like he's kind of gone the other way of, sitting on the couch and not getting a job. And again, he's just feeling that sense of entitlement in the way that he is, and that power imbalance. There's two of them and one of her. So she has to address both of them because they're both feeling like they're kind of controlling the situation. And she doesn't feel empowered to speak up. And as I say, he probably doesn't feel like he's abusive, right? I'm not abusive. And sometimes people, like I say, many people may not see themselves as making abusive actions. But if you as a person are saying things where a person's afraid of you, or you're making all the decisions, or you're not thinking about the other person's best interests, or taking their money or possessions, for example, like we've seen in the video, then that's abusive, right? And the impact can be tremendous. And each person is going to feel a different impact than another person, because we all have different emotions. But the fact is that we have to remember that every action that we do take has an impact on someone, whether good or bad. Telling someone the way that you address someone, and your actions of, even shutting off a light or moving the puzzle, that has an impact of feeling like I'm not important. Why don't ask my needs, right? And that impact has an emotional person feels sad. They don't say anything. You can see it in people's faces, emotions. So we are on this journey. When we have it, we have to overcome, when we see these situations happening, we have to overcome our hesitation to help, to be supportive, and have a conversation with the individual that we're concerned about. And how do we do that? We use an example of, we use it called the SYNC IT conversation, or the SYNC IT acronym. So we see it, name it, and check it. So what are we seeing? What are we noticing? What's making you feel uncomfortable? And we're recognizing abuse and warning signs, learning about it like we're doing today. We name it. If we see it happening, address it to the person that you're, that what's happening to. Talking about how that you may be worried about the individual. Talk to the person around. It's overcoming your hesitation to help. We don't have to solve the problem. It's just talking to that person and that someone that you trust about it, right? What you've noticed, like name the things that you've noticed. I noticed that Michael moved downstairs. I noticed that your son took something from the house. Or if you're in the community, you might have overheard or you might have witnessed someone taking something from a home that wasn't theirs. So we can't jump to conclusions, but we need to think about what are their actions and what is it doing to the older person, ourselves or a friend or a colleague that we know. And then check it, right? Inquire with the person what's happening. If you're worried and it's serious danger, then 911 we can reach out to if it's an emergency, or we can contact an agency to say, I have a situation, what can we do to support that individual and how you can help. And we have to make sure the person feels comfortable about chatting about the situation. We don't want to push someone into having a conversation that they don't want to have, or they don't want to open the door for support to have that relationship come in. So it has to be, sometimes could take a long time. Sometimes the person may want to address it right away. And we have to go on the journey with that person. We can't make the decision about what they should or shouldn't do about the situation. We have to chat about is the person willing to have a conversation about it? Are they willing to feel comfortable opening up with you about the situation? And how we approach it can make a difference. So I want to show you an example of an approach that a friend made to Carla in this situation that she sees. And look to see if this is helpful or not.
How are things going with your son being home?
Oh, I feel badly for him. He's having such a hard time of it. He and his daughter moved upstairs on the weekend.
And where does that leave you?
In the spare room.
In the basement? Oh, I am sorry, but that is going too far. You still cater to his every whim when what he really needs is a swift kick in the pants. If you don't put your foot down, he's never going to leave that couch, never mind look for a job.
So looking at that scenario, do you think Carla feels supported or comfortable? When we talk about allowing support to come in, that probably wasn't a very good approach. She criticized her. She probably wants to help her, but she's doing it probably then in a not an inviting way. You can tell also by Carla's emotional response. Her face was sad. She put her head down. She felt embarrassed that she was allowing this to happen in her family. And it looks like her friend is blaming her for the problem that's happening. So she wasn't being, helpful in having that conversation with her. And it's very unlikely that Carla would even continue to speak with her about the situation or reach out for help if she needed it, based on the way that she approached the situation with Carla, because she felt it was all her fault. And it didn't open the door it didn't provide an opportunity for her to go back and ask more questions, being that she felt that she was the one that was the problem, not that the son was. So let's give her another try and see how she does this time.
How are things going with your son being home?
Oh, I feel badly for him. He's having such a hard time of it. He and his daughter moved upstairs on the weekend.
And where does that leave you?
In the spare room.
In the basement? I'm worried about you. Your life has changed so much. Are you okay?
That video makes me almost cry every time. It's that compassion and approach and that openness of touch, if the person's comfortable with that. And she shows concern. She's not blaming her. She's not judging her, but she checks and asks the question, are you okay? That's all she has to do. We're not asking anyone to, run out and solve the problem. Start the conversation by reaching out to say, are you okay? And then let that person determine how they want to start that journey. We don't know what's going to happen next when we do reach out to support someone, because that's up to Carla, the older adult, and if the friend to support her along the way. what she has done is sort of stop that isolation where Carla is alone, living with the son and no one else to help or speak to about what's going on. That she now knows that she has a friend that she can speak to. Maybe it's over a cup of tea, and maybe it will take a while for her to get her son to move on or get him support. But she's broke that isolation that we talked about earlier around the risk of escalation, because she's now stopped it, knowing that there's someone there to help, and maybe will empower her to speak up against the way that she's being treated by the family member. And how we have that support, as I talked about. It's overcoming our own fears too about reaching out and asking, "Are you okay?" Right? And like I say, those words are very powerful. So when we say every small action has a big impact, you could see even on Carla's face that, "Are you okay?" She knew that she was there to support her. So we don't, like I say, we don't have to solve it, but we just need to support the person along that journey. And it's kind of like having that backpack where we support with respect and safety, that we on that journey to support that individual along the way that they would choose to find some resolution to the situation that they're in. And we need to respect the choices that that person wants. They may not want to make a change right away. They may want to talk to an agency. Maybe they do want to reach out to Durham Deaf Services for further support, or a peer support to have a colleague to talk to it about. Everyone's journey is different, and how they want to get their relationship healthy again. So knowing that we all have that place in our hearts where we all want to care for someone, that you really comes from that point of like, "I'm worried about you." And that approach is very genuine, and it comes from care and your concern for someone. That's where it starts. And we have to support each other, whether that's a neighbor, friend, or family, along that journey. And we also have to recognize that people may disclose. If we ask a question, "Are you okay?" that someone may actually say, "No, I'm not," and be prepared for that. And as I say, looking out for their safety. If that's a priority, then we know the steps to take in terms of, emergency. But it also is just, if someone wants further safety, to go to an agency to help them plan for safety issues, if that's the case. So again, each person comes from a different place, but we don't want to blame the person for what's happening. So just going back again, doing see it, name it, check it. Those are really important factors as we go through this. Those are the 3 things that we want to learn from when we're looking at abusive situations. What am I seeing? I need to know, what do I know the warning signs? Can you name what's happening? Because you're a little bit more educated around that. And then ask, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk about it? Would you like to have a conversation? Would you like to reach out, have some tea, have some further, ask further questions about it, and take the guidance from that individual." The other thing is that you can reach out to people that you trust, right? There are people that work in the field that can help with safety plans, as I mentioned, that can help with just talking through maybe different coping strategies, other support services that are available along the way. But you don't have to do this alone. And if you know that you or someone that you know could be mistreated, how do you yourself want to be treated, right? There are supports out there. So these are just a few in Durham region. In Durham region, as you know, I think you've had Detective Martin Franson speak to or do some videos, education videos, and come to the Durham Deaf Services to do education. He's in charge now, I think, of the senior support unit. They are great. Go on the Durham Police Services website. They have videos on all the different scams with ASL interpretation to provide further education on those. There's Crime Stoppers. People can report anonymously. If it's a scam, then you can report to the Anti-Fraud Center online, they have a form online that you can put in there, or your local police services. We have a senior safety line that people can, there's online chat now on the internet that you can talk to people through the Assaulted Women's Helpline. And they also have, I believe, TTY services as well. If you need legal support, the Advocacy Center for the Elderly, they're part of Legal Aid. They have very, very, very knowledgeable on elder abuse issues. And they can provide some legal support to older adults. And the Public Guardian Trustee, if you know someone who's not capable and is in an abusive situation, they can provide some intervention and investigation in some of those situations. And reaching out to your local home care if you need further home care supports or mental health supports, or a shelter. Luke's Place provides a shelter. They do also provide some legal support as well, which I just learned about the other day. So these are just local services, and there's many, many more. And I know Maggie and Sonia are well informed of some of these services that are in your local community that can support you. We also have a website. Our organization's website has the 211 database where you can